Well, welcome on this Monday morning, afternoon, or evening, wherever you are. Just going to take a few deep breaths just to get centered here, and feel free to join me. Try to put aside everything that came before this moment. Well, I just have something I want to share this morning. I belong to a co-housing community, and once a month, each person gets to share something that they care about. So I thought I would introduce our what I do, because people don't really know what I do. They just see me here, living here. And it was probably one of the hardest things I haven't had to do for a long time. You know, it's sort of like that elevator speech about focusing or trying to describe the activities. It was really hard for me. And I went to our website because we work with a lot of communities and organizations and humanitarian organizations. And so I just really made it really simple that we're transforming the conversation on humanitarian work. And it begins with deep listening. And we also honor local knowledge and the local wisdom. So again, we don't go in as top down, but we're equals with the communities that we work with. So anyways, that was something new for me to be able to try to articulate that. So I just that's what came to me this morning. But I'm excited about today's continuation of last week about the sense of belonging. I think that's an ongoing question and path for all of us. And I just find as I get older, there's something comforting about that sense of belonging, individually and in community. So I'm sort of really looking forward to Lynn's guiding us on these questions.
Yes, well, I'm very happy that I get the chance to talk to you about belonging again, because it felt like it was such a rich topic and that we were just getting started last week. And we were going to have another speaker who couldn't make it this week. So that gave me a wonderful opportunity to do a part 2 for belonging. And it seems really also very central to this season of Hanukkah, Christmas, Kwanzaa, New Year's, whatever we celebrate here around this time. And before we start on belonging, or maybe it is a start on belonging, next week, the 26th, usually we would have a Celebrate Gene birthday party for his birthday. But instead of that, we decided to postpone that so that people on the West Coast and other places that with different time zones could join us. We're going to have a community celebration of the holidays. And we invite you to bring anything that is meaningful to you about the holidays, stories from your childhood or what's meaningful to you now, or a piece of music or an image, whatever it is that we make. In the topic of belonging, one of the things that we touched on last week that I want to talk more about today is that what may be a symbol of belonging to one person or to one group may be a symbol of alienation to another person or another group. And Christmas is very much an example of that. Christmas is, for many people around the world, a celebration of peace on earth and togetherness, and the celebration of new life with this baby coming into the world. And then for other people, it's a symbol of being blamed for Jesus, being killed. It's a symbol of alienation. I remember when I first got together with my first partner, and she had never celebrated Christmas, and I insisted that we go out and buy a Christmas tree, and she was carrying the Christmas tree through the streets, and suddenly she got terrified, and she said, "Oh my God," she's Jewish, of course, "oh my God, people will see me carrying a Christmas tree." And she quickly ducked into the house, and it was sort of traumatic for her to have a Christmas tree. And I've always remembered that scene of her sort of cowering, appearing with this Christmas tree, when for me, it was a symbol of joyful gathering and togetherness. So what we want in this gathering next week is for you to bring whatever feelings, whatever experiences, whatever the meanings are of these holidays for you, and we're going to just share them together. So there won't be one person doing a reflection. We're all reflecting for each other, and in keeping with that, you received last night from Christine our email welcome little video we've been working on very, very hard and long to make just the right kind of flyer and video to welcome everybody to help the helpers. And it would be wonderful if you send that to people that we wouldn't have on our mailing list, and welcome everybody to help the helpers in the next year. Also, part 2 of belonging. Well, the first part was about the mysteries and sort of contradictions of belonging. And where I'd like to end up today is to invite you to think about practices of belonging, how we can extend our belonging more and more and more, that those ripples out of more and more security ourselves, and offering more and more welcome to others in belonging. So that's where we want to end up today. But I thought that we would start just sort of going over some of the points that I made last week, because some of you weren't there, and some of you would like to sort of be refreshed in those points. And Melinda pointed out that you'll receive these points freshly, maybe, but I don't want to take a lot of time for them. And already we've taken a lot of time just in our welcomes. So the most important part is the part that you bring, of course, your discussion and your comments. And they were so rich last time. So we're going to begin. Christine, can you put that handout in the chat for me?
She did.
I did.
Oh, you did. Great. So if you can have that next to you. I'm not going to put it on the screen because I can't stand the feeling of something between you and me. Gene says in therapy, he never has anything between him and the client. And I take that very literally. I don't want anything between you and me when I'm talking with you, or I don't feel like I'm really there with you. So if it's not accessible to you now, you can go back to it later, because I'll be hopefully keeping all those same points. So belonging, a very, very big concept, a very, very big word, so central, so important. And we are made out of belonging. Jean says we are interaction. We are one body. We are one living system. And as one living system, we belong both to ourselves and we belong to each other. We belong to the world. We belong to all of the other species. We are all interconnected. And we know that, right? We know that academically. But let's just take a moment to feel it. It's so different to know it academically and to feel it. Let's just take a moment to take that in. That in itself is such a mystery, that we are our individual, unique selves, very, very particular, will never be again the self that we are. And we are part of larger and larger bodies of life. We talked about it last week as an inalienable right. How can somebody take what we're made of away from us? How can we be alienated from that right to belong? How can we be threatened that we don't belong to ourselves and to everything else? But point number 2 is that our biggest challenge in the world as a species, as a life form, is that we don't believe that everybody and everything can belong. We don't believe that the universe is big enough. The greatest threat is the threat to our belonging. The sense of alienation, the sense that we're walking on eggshells, that we have to be this way or that way, we have to do this or that to belong, that if these people or this person doesn't like us, doesn't respect us, we don't belong. We have to buy the right brands of clothing to belong, on and on and on. So our biggest challenge is to actually feel and experience our belonging. The third point is that in some very primal, basic way, as a species, and other species also, not just us, the easiest way to feel that we belong is to bond with others against them, the us against them phenomenon. It's so easy to do. Oh, we're like this, they're like that. And we do it in such subtle ways, and we may not even know that we're doing it. It's so basic. Let's just take a moment to gather that experience into us of childhood games of us and them, bullying, sororities, all of the rudimentary us against them activities that sort of anchor for us a false sense of belonging. If I'm not like them, then I belong. And the fourth point is that belonging is both a gift and a claim. It's a gift in that it's the gift of life. We are that belonging. And we see it when we have an eye to see it in everything. everything is a message of belonging for us. And we have to receive that gift. There's something active there about receiving the gift of belonging, assuring our little ones within and without, right? That it's not up for grabs, we belong. And it's also a claim. We can't wait around for somebody else to say, oh, yes, you're good enough. Oh, yes, you belong. Oh, yes, you're the right kind of person. You're from the right place. You have the right amount of money. You have the right amount of education, or you have the right amount of street smarts, or whatever it is. We have to claim our belonging. And we claim it in protest marches. We claim it in voting. We claim it in so many different ways. But it's first an inward thing of claiming our belonging. And I have this as the 10th point, but if you'll permit me to, if you'll permit me to depart from my handout, let's make it this point, that focusing is a primary act of belonging. And by focusing, I don't mean our 6 steps or something. I mean that universal experience of reflecting in an embodied way on ourselves and our circumstance and our situation, that gathering ourselves in is the act of belonging to ourselves, but it's also the act of belonging to the universe, because when I go inside in a focusing way, I don't find some pristine me, some separate entity. I find all the life coming through me, all my connectedness to you, the people that I'm with right now, and out and out and out. So focusing is a primary act of belonging. So let's go to point number 5. And that is that what is a symbol for me or for one person of belonging may be a symbol of being outsider and alienation for another person. And it's so important for us to belong. We'll do anything to belong. We'll make ourselves into pretzels to belong. And so that's a very big problem, that for me, the Christmas tree meant belonging. For my partner, the Christmas tree meant being an outsider. And how do we navigate that? Symbols of belonging are so important to us. Symbols aren't just things. Symbols are our inner life is made up of symbols. So this is our very, very big challenge, to navigate that discrepancy of what belonging is for one, alienation is for another. And I want to tell you a story about that. And I'm going to call the story The Lock. And when I was preparing last week for this part 1 of belonging, what was going on in my household was this story of the lock. As some of you may know, my partner has been sick, and so our household has expanded to include the helpers for my partner. And we've become a a family. And one member of the household came to me and requested a lock on a cabinet with a lock so that she could feel safe with her precious belongings, that was really hers. And I said, oh, yes, of course. But instead of buying you a cabinet, I don't want to look for a place for that. You could just take that cabinet, and I pointed to an old cabinet that's part of the kitchen, and said, well, you could put a lock on that. And I pictured some little discreet way of locking that. But there was no little discreet way of locking it. And she put this great big metal padlock on this prominent cabinet in the kitchen. And I looked at it, oh my God, I didn't expect that. And other members of the household were appalled and offended. What? That lock is a symbol of mistrust. It's a symbol that you think I'm a thief. It's a symbol of keep out. And there were such strong feelings about this lock. And all the while I was preparing for this talk on belonging, and it was so helpful to me to see it be enacted, this larger issue, since we are, and our lives are a microcosm, right, of everything. The lock is a symbol of belonging to one, and it's a symbol of alienation to another. And I was able to work it through. First, I was just very upset, feeling like, oh my God, what do I do here? I did the wrong thing. Did I do the wrong thing? And then I was able to talk to the one who needed a lock and say, oh, of course I'll get you a little cabinet with a lock, but we don't want this big lock on this cabinet. And that was all fine. She immediately took the lock away, and everything, at least for me, relaxed. And I was able to see something so clearly that I wouldn't have thought about if that hadn't happened. So I call that the story of the lock. And I'm sure that you have many stories like that also that you could tell us. Let's go on to what is new in what I want to say today. And that is what I'm calling practices of belonging. Navigating that, the lock, was for me a practice of belonging. And maybe one of the first things about a practice of belonging that I don't have in my handout here, but you could write it in, is to not take sides. What's fundamental is to take sides with the us and the them. And what doesn't come naturally is to say, well, let's look at this as a big thing, right? It's not this is right and this is wrong, this is good and this is bad. But how do we allow all in to the arena of belonging? So let's let that be the first act of what I'm calling making a relational home. The acts of belonging are making a relational home. And the relational home is a home that we have to always be renovating and expanding. And we have to be throwing out the old stuff. Oh my God, I have so much old stuff to throw out, and getting new stuff, and then prizing the really good old stuff that we have and having a place for it. So making a relational home is a matter of renovation, expanding, and making room for everything. When we can feel the deep, secure sense of belonging, we can make room for everything, including making room for people that we disagree with, making room for ideas that are abhorrent to us, which doesn't mean we agree with them, but it means making room in the universe for them, considering what they are about in a deeper way, getting to the deeper point, making room by allowing people to be angry at us who are angry at us, allowing ourselves at moments to be the symbol of alienation for someone, like I was with the lock. To allow that, to be okay with that, to make room for that, to make space for everybody. Maybe the simplest for me act of belonging is the welcome, to welcome everybody. And I found when I was younger, I was very self-conscious and shy. And as I become older, old maybe even, I have discovered that it's wonderful to be friendly. It's wonderful to really, in New York, it's a little radical to greet people with my eyes, or even with my voice in the corner deli where I get my coffee. I banter with the guy who serves me the coffee, and to welcome people, especially people who can be experienced as on the margins. If a homeless person is asking for money, the most important thing, even if I don't have any money and I don't have cash on me anymore, is to look at the person and smile at them and say, I'm sorry, I don't have any money. It would probably be better if I carried some money with me so I could give it to them. But even if I don't do that, that welcome is so important. Another act of belonging is to listen, and to listen deeply, as we know about in focusing. And that has to be a practice, because it doesn't come naturally. When I'm not working as a therapist or in community empowerment, just in my regular life, to really listen to people, I have to remind myself to really listen. And the most difficult one that we won't have time to really spend today on is that a practice of belonging is to be so secure in my own connectedness that I can take collective responsibility for others, even if I don't feel like I am one of those people who did this or that or the other thing. I am part of this collective responsibility. As an American, I have to take responsibility for a lot of stuff. As someone with a Christian tradition, I have to take responsibility. As a white person, I have to take responsibility. As so many things, I have to take responsibility, collective responsibility, for the alienation of others And I can do that without feeling that I'm blaming myself. Taking responsibility isn't about blame. It's not about they're to blame or I'm to blame or somebody's to blame. Responsibility is about the ability to respond. And I think that that's one of the most difficult acts of belonging or practices of belonging, is to be able to take collective responsibility without self-blame or blaming anybody else. Okay, I said a whole lot, and now I want to hear from you. Let's just take a moment to take in all of that and to see all the things that came to you there about that great big mouthful. One of the one of the acts of belonging, the practices of belonging that we have in this group, is to notice when somebody else wants to speak. And I always love that when people, oh, so-and-so was trying to say something, or I want to hear from so-and-so.
It looks like Lucy has her hand up.
Yes, thank you. I just, I've been walking with you and listening, and just in this moment, I arrived here in this old square in just across the border from Germany into Holland. And this building here represents Belgium, Germany, and Holland meeting in this area here. And I think I just wanted to bring that in, and that kind of synchronicity around belonging and the convergence of different cultures and different peoples. And also I want to thank you, Lynn, for the way you talked about taking collectivity. Can't see you anymore. Where are you? There you are. I found it so beautiful the way you spoke in such a relaxed, warm, gentle way, and the way that you frame so clearly that taking responsibility and collective responsibility is not about blaming ourselves and not about blaming others, because of course, I guess as probably most of us are experiencing at the moment, this is such a hot topic right now, and there's just so much blame flying around, and people getting so entrenched into very painfully locked positions, and I think I've been worried about how this will play out. Will it, and how will it play out in the focusing world? And the one thing maybe I can just I would love to add one more thing, which is that as I've been listening to this kind of there's this culture that's strongly coming up around we need to use a certain language, and we have to express things in a certain way, and I've been thinking, wow, I mean, as focusers, we're so deeply trained in the importance of finding our own words, the words that come organically from the felt sense. And I suppose I'm hoping that we might be able to, yes, I guess, do what you're doing and find a way through these times in a way that is helpful, and not dictatorial or something. Helpful and healing without being dictatorial.
Yes. Thank you so much, Lucy. That's so important, what you're saying, and you brought it right into our lived experience here. And I want to say that all of our ills, our individual ills, our social ills, are disorders of belonging. And blame is a way that we try to help ourselves to belong by saying they don't belong, right? Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Ruth is raising her hand.
Thank you, Kim.
Go ahead. You don't have to wait to be recognized. The claiming belonging in this group is to just speak. Right,
Okay.
Jim?
Thank you. I'm with a different perspective on this right now, Lynn. Not quite sure exactly how to articulate it, but yes, there is this deep longing of belonging for I think all of us, and the truth of that in our, in the ultimate way. But there's also something that I'm aware of in myself and others, of the places that are that don't want to belong, or are afraid of belonging, or have been so injured that they don't know. We don't know that, or that part doesn't know about, doesn't trust belonging. It's really, has been wounded, or whatever. So I clearly know that place in myself at various times.
Absolutely. That's
So
that.
I just wanted to bring that in also, because it's a hard place to be with, and the truth is I don't always know how to be with that, how to work with that part. So.
Yeah, and often we feel like if we belong to the others, then we can't belong to ourselves. And then even if we belong with one part of ourselves, we're afraid we can't belong to the other part of ourselves or something.
Something, or belonging to something larger, maybe a surrendering in some way, or requesting of something that doesn't feel safe, or something like that. So I just wanted to make that space for the parts that don't want to, or have difficulty belonging to.
And I'm taking in that word surrender. There is a surrender in the belonging. Yeah.
I'm really glad you said that, Ruth, because I think I recognize those parts in myself and in my clients. Like, for some people, there was a relief during the pandemic not to have to socialize, right? And all the obligations sort of clear and reset. But I think now we're experiencing, no, I am, and others and my clients, this, well, how do you reconnect? How do you do that when it's almost become a habit of people more not connecting as well? And I think I'm just exploring that in myself as well. It's really good you said that, because I think it's when something isn't happening, it's good to know that there's usually a part that is scared, or even likes it, or likes the solitude, or likes being with the self without obligations or anything performative. And so much of, especially during the Christmas season, I mean, I feel so fortunate in the Christmas sometimes that I'm Jewish, because of all the intensity of obligation and performativeness, right? So it's authentic connection that I crave, and I think others crave, being seen for real, not having to play any kind of role, or, obviously kindness is important role to play even when we don't feel it, right? But other things, like, so I'm so glad you said that, Ruth, made space for that.
I'd like to say something about the collective responsibility. I feel a tremendous amount of guilt for all that I have. And after last time we watched the Elephant Whisperer last night.
Oh, I love that movie. Everybody should watch that.
Yeah. And I looked at my partner and I said, well, how is it that we can, have so much and they have so little? And yet those folks seem to be as happy as anybody could be in doing what they wanted. So when you said about, not blaming yourself for having too much, that's what came to my mind. Yeah. And it gives some relief to know that, and sometimes blaming myself makes it look as though it's just too big for me to do anything about. So, just back off. But not blaming means that you have room to do something.
Yes, yes.
This is Sophie. I was watching something yesterday about Madagascar, a tribe in Madagascar that was still living in kind of the ancient way, interconnected with nature very much, having no need or sense of having land that belong to them. It's an interconnection. They don't have to have this possession in order to feel like this is their land, their home or whatever. And the person doing the reflection on this beautiful documentary on Madagascar was talking about poverty and development and kind of looking at this reaching out for development that we tend to have toward what we call poverty. And instead of that, looking at which one is poverty? Is this poverty to have ripped clothes on your body, but have this sense of really interconnectedness and belonging and meaning and joy with their life the way it is. So yeah, and I'm not sure now what was my point. Anyhow, I wanted to also name something about belonging that came to me when somebody was talking about authentic belonging. And my sense that sometimes I don't want to belong to something because I don't want to have responsibility or more responsibility in the sense of having to do more or be more out there. And then I thought, oh, maybe belonging is really authentic belonging for me is really a being belonging or a belonging of being. And I don't want to say just being, because actually it's big being with our essence, being with the way we manifest our essence in this moment. So, yeah, wanted to share that. Thank you.
Lynn, you're muted.
Thank you. It was the New York City traffic I was trying to save you from. I was saying that we're talking now about different levels of belonging, right? Different spheres of belonging, that on the big level, that's how you could tell that I was muted, because I was doing that. On the big level, we all belong. Everyone belongs. We fundamentally belong. But then there are other levels in which we could talk about authentic belonging, or pseudo belonging, or obligatory belonging, many other levels where we're choosing how we belong, as Sophie said, our way of being. And for me, the felt sense of obligation is a signal to me that I'm not deeply experiencing my belonging, that I'm thinking I have to do or act a certain way in order to have the belonging. Steph, it looks like you were about to say something. You lit up.
Oh, you're so sweet. No, I was actually downloading the links, but thank you. But I just want to reiterate what you said, which was a practice of belonging is to be so secure in my own connectedness, number one, that I can take collective responsibility for others. And I just love that. That one statement has given me so much to contemplate within my own family, having a difficult family member, not going into details, but just that, to really be secure in my own connectedness first. And that's a path. That's a path. So thank you so much for that statement. That has a lot of richness in it.
Right, right. I like that idea of it being a path. Okay, I'm going to ask Dorothy to read O'Donoghue's poem again that we heard last week. And then we'll go into our breakout rooms. And to just notice what I noticed in the poem is this ever expanding belonging that he talks about, and the feeling of being haunted when our belonging is threatened. But you may notice other things in the poem. But then in the breakout rooms, you'll of course talk about whatever is there for you, but maybe also practices yourself, how you practice belonging or want to practice belonging. Okay, Dorothy, we're ready for the poem.
Dorothy, you're on mute too. Sorry. I'm the mute police.
Thank you.
We really need mute polices. Mute police.
May you listen to your longing to be free. May the frames of your belonging be generous enough for your dreams. May you arise each day with the voice of blessing whispering in your heart. May you find a harmony between your soul and your life. May the sanctuary of your soul never become haunted. May you know the eternal longing that lives in the heart of time. May there be kindness in your gaze when you look within. May you never place walls between the light and yourself. May you allow the wild beauty of the invisible world to gather you, mind you, and embrace you in belonging.
Yes, the wild beauty of the invisible world. Isn't that a wonderful, a wonderful line, a wonderful focusing line? Do we need a breath to sort of switch gears from one experience to the next?
I took a leap of
sharing something, and then she did too. It was very so genuine. Yes.
A leap. I love that. A leap of sharing something. That you're saying that reminded me, Katerina, of a moment that I felt the most belonging in my psychoanalytic community, which tends to be very formal, is when a few of us got together after a conference and we were talking about our most humiliating moments. And then we had this feeling of belonging with each other, that we were risking sharing that. And sometimes sharing the ways that we feel we don't belong can be the most intimate acts of belonging. Not that that's what you wish necessarily sharing, Katerina, but it just brought that to mind.
Yeah, and the daring to belong, the going out and waving at people, even if they don't wave back. The next day, 4 or 5 people might do wave back. So this kind of thread of continuity. Yes,
Yeah.
you know, just
I always feel that sort of risk of belonging by allowing the videos of myself to be on YouTube publicly, and that feels like this big risk of, do I belong? Can I belong? Do I look good enough? Do I sound good enough? Those risks of assuming belonging.
Interesting, very rich discussion. It has tentacles. It reaches. I belong. This, I don't belong to you and you and you. It seems to just flow that way.
Yeah, yeah. I like that, tentacles.
Yeah. I like levels of belonging. Depends on perspective. When a helicopter looking down,
I missed that last part about the helicopter because of the interference.
Yeah, I just cut off myself. Belong to the, I don't know, the Christian group. I don't belong to the Jewish group. But if I go a little higher up, there are all these other groups, the Islamic group and Hindu group and so on and so forth. And we're all part of the same human family. So is this belongingness, I think, is very is that just another judgment we have, that if we get far enough up in the sky looking down, we belong to something more basic?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I think you froze. But what I got was that when some song about from a distance, God is looking at us from a distance or something, and from a helicopter, we all belong. But then there are these different levels of belonging that we choose to belong, particularly like a special belonging to certain people, to certain the wedding ceremony as this ceremony of belonging, commitment ceremonies. You're lit up, Dorothy. I don't know if that means that
you
want to speak.
I didn't know it's lit up, but that's funny. It's like telepathic.
Yes.
Yeah, that's an amazing gift you have. I just wanted to share that I'm more and more conscious lately of, rather than being in the one part so fully of like feeling not accepted or rejected, or fully so, like that there's this kind of so many parts to each when you don't feel accepted and when you feel more belonging. It's just like, there's so much complexity to it. And I'm just thinking like child thinking versus adult, and black white thinking versus multicolors. And that idea in the practice of belonging is helpful to me, and my group sort of led me more to that. And also the pace, that each time you feel something that's not quite right in the gears of your life, like there's timing, like always think of like there's a timing and a pacing to it, like your wonderful lock story. Thank you.
Yes.
Lucy, did you have your hand up?
Oh, she has to go. She was just saying goodbye. Could I share something quickly? Do we have time or no?
We do.
I had some experience yesterday. I have these two girlfriends where I live, and one of them, I'm probably going to use all the right language, so please don't do anything with the video, because I'm going to say Black, and that's probably been updated to something else, and Jewish, and maybe, anyway, my one friend is Jewish, one friend was raised Catholic, but she joined this, a Black Baptist church out here. And so when I go to that church where I'm always welcome, she sings in the choir, and it is this beautiful place to enter. I mean, it's a very humble, physically looking place, but to go in as this white Jewish person, but particularly as a white person, and these people who don't know me, this congregation welcomes me, and the pastor is like, Lynn, you would fall in love with her. You'd all fall in love with her. She stands for everything wonderful, and she stands for people, and she preaches so beautifully, and there's singing and there's hands, and I love it so much. And always there's a time when they're like, there's a time at the end where we close our eyes, and she invites us to, if we want to join the congregation, and if we're willing to accept Jesus as our Lord and Savior. And I mean, I've only wanted to belong since I came out of the womb, or like my earliest memory is wanting to belong. I don't care if it's to a bunch of great white sharks, just let me belong. I'll be a shark, I'll be whatever. And I want to join so much. And my core, I'm Jewish. Since I was a little girl, I was bat mitzvahed. I'm Jewish. I like Jesus. I'll hold hands with Jesus, but I also have Hashem is my God. I'm Jewish. I'm like a child of Israel. That is so inherently what I'm made up of. And yet each time I attend the church, I'm like, how can I want to join the congregation, and I'm Jewish, and I am not just identified or because of guilt, but that's also who I am. If you cut me in half, you'd find that in there. So it's that it feels like, how do we go? And maybe a lot of it is the interaction, even interacting right there on the edge with, I love this congregation. I love to be accepted here and to be accepting here. And I'm here as a Jewish woman who also wants to love and praise with this Baptist community. And I know I've just talked for 45 minutes, but the last thing is the end of the evening, same three of us, girlfriends, Catholic, two Jewish girls, we went to the menorah lighting because it was the first night of Hanukkah. And my dear Catholic friend who just sang in the Baptist choir in the morning, and my other friend who attended, and all came to the lighting and stood to sing in Hebrew, carols. And it was just lovely that there was no bias. There was just this kind of maybe a little strangeness, but this lovingness, like here we all are and we can explore together. So there was belonging with the three of us. And then this also, how do we belong here where we clearly don't look like we belong? And I can't make Jesus my Lord and Savior. And yet I want to be there praying with everyone. So it's a thing. It's a really big, it's the big core place.
Thank you, Rachel. That was beautiful. I hope you will let us make that public.
Okay, if it's edited for political correctness and every other thing and conciseness.
Well, I guess that also is a question. Can we belong if we don't have politically correct language? And can we claim the belonging if we want to express ourselves and we don't know the politically correct language? And that's a big issue these days, as Lucy was saying, right? It's a big issue for me with my trans friends to know the right language. And I always in New York, we would say, I always fuck it up and don't say the right pronoun. But I still belong, I hope. I mean, I claim. We have time for just one more sharing, and we've had our poem already.
Okay. Can I belong if I want a big, gigantic padlock on my cabinet? That's what I want to know.
Say that again, Jim.
Can I belong if I want a big, gigantic padlock on my cabinet?
Oh, absolutely. You can.
Everybody else is protesting and saying I'm calling them thieves.
Right, that's right. Yeah. So what do you all think? Can Jim belong if he wants a big, shiny metal padlock on his cabinet?
Yeah, we'll find our way forward with you, Jim.
Yeah, because we belong to ourselves first. So there you are.
I also want to say with Dorothy, with the poem you read, I'm not going to say it verbatim, but when looking within ourselves, to be kind to those judgments, and we talked a little bit about that in our group as well, like being judgmental of ourselves and others. Can we be kind about that? Because that's going to come up at times.
Absolutely.
Can we not beat ourselves up about it?
Absolutely, yes.
And I think if we could accept somebody's need for that padlock and love them even so, and that's just one piece of who they are.
Yes.
That's not the whole of them, but that's a need they have right now for whatever reason.
Yes. I remember in the early 70s when it was very important to feminists to have separate spaces. Only women were allowed at certain concerts or summer camps or something like that. And that the men who were our friends who would allow the separatism, the separateness, were affirming the larger belonging, that you can let people be separate or have a room of their own, a cabinet of their own when they need it.